In today's video, I'll be attempting to beat Grounded using only ranged weapons. This means I can only use bows, crossbows, and staves to damage my enemies. I decided not to allow throwing weapons as it would just be boring. The question is, will I be able to take on all of the bosses and beat the game, or will I fail a challenge for the first time ever? A quick reminder that only 14% of you are subscribed. This means 86% of people still haven't hit the sub button. What are you doing? We're very close to 20k. Let's see if everyone can click the sub button on this video and we can at least hit 18,000 subs.
So please, whatever.
We begin inside of the kid's case. Like always, we are on medium difficulty as mild is a joke and woe is also a joke. I started by collecting some basic resources and headed to the analyzer to analyze a pebblet, sap and plant fiber, before crafting a pebblet axe. Funnily enough, one of the first places I ended up was turning on the surveyor scanner. When doing this, I of course had to dodge the Ruz teas in the lab. I then headed deeper into the hedge to break web sacks as my goal was to get Nat Fuzz. We needed 4 of this and this was the only way to get it without breaking the rules. I also looted this chest under the hedge for some extra loot, including a meal, which would help keep me fed while I got my first weapon. Speaking of which, I collected some more Nat Fuzz, and before I knew it we had collected 5 pieces. I headed to the resource analyzer to analyze our new items, and I was able to craft myself a sprig bow. But there was a problem. I had no arrows. So I headed to the bombardiers nearby and got them to fight the mites. This allowed me to collect mite fuzz. It also caused me to take my first death, because I couldn't block this attack. I then found a thistle plant and collected a bunch of the needles on it. Off to the oak tree we go to collect some acorns, because in this challenge, I'm actually allowed to use armor. I made sure to analyze the thistle needle and mite fuzz to guarantee unlocking the arrow recipe. This allowed me to make 40 arrows and meant my first goal was complete: get a weapon without breaking the rules. Now, I just had 7 bosses and the JavaMatic left. Easy, right? I set up a chest to clear my inventory before crafting a roasting spit. I then made some acorn armor to increase my defense. I saw an ant trying to steal my food, so I had to take care of it. Surprisingly, it died in just 1 shot. This was strange as I expected the bow to be a lot weaker, but ants are weak to stabbing damage. I decided to do some target practice on a weevil, and as you can see, my aim is perfect. I'm practically the Robin Hood of Grounded, and with my aim training done, it was off to the laser to clear out the mites. Here I learned something most of you probably don't know about Grounded. When using a bow, the longer you pull it back for, the more damage it does. So if I didn't charge my shots, it took 2 per lawn mite, but when I did charge them, it only took 1. This is hard to measure though, because you don't know when it's reached maximum charge or how long it takes. With the mites taken care of, I headed to the mysterious machine and turned it on, unlocking the oak lab. While here, I took care of 2 gnats, both for their fuzz and to practice my aim. Once home, I realised my base was on the wrong side of the juice box, so I relocated it a bit further away to avoid any unwanted wolf spiders showing up. I also completed my armor set with an acorn face mask. With the gnat fuzz I had collected, I made a gas mask as I knew I'd need this to later avoid damage in the haze. Off to the 4-leaf clover cave to get coup de grace, as this was one of the only ways to increase my damage this early on. Time to take on a wolf spider. This footage is sped up because, I kid you not, this took me over 8 minutes. You heard me right, 8 minutes. I didn't get hit a single time, and eventually I was able to take out the wolf spider. This gave me stage 1 of Mithridatism, and I was hoping I could get 2 fangs to make the insect bow, but when I looted it I only got 1.
I like it!
It was now time to try my luck with a bombardier. This was hard as I had no shield, so couldn't block attacks, but eventually I was victorious, obtaining our first boiling gland. And just like that, I only needed silk rope to make our insect axe, which meant there was only 1 place to go. But before we do that, I had to head to the oak lab to help Burgle up from the ground. I skipped through his dialogue and was then able to activate the ASL, unlocking the bioscanners and purchasing the smithing station. And with that, it was off to the hedge to grab the first piece of the password and collect the granola bars, before heading down to grab the second password piece. While running through, I grabbed the aphid figurine, unlocking stage 1 of Rascal Rogue, although this would be useless as you can't steal items with ranged weapons. I then headed and grabbed the 3rd and 4th pieces of the password before using the bioscanner and then opening the door, collecting the super chip and the duper disc. Before leaving the hedge, I headed to the storage room to grab the all-important silk rope and then headed to the outpost to grab the Broodmother BLT recipe, allowing us to make it later into the game. Now that I was home, it was time to give Burgle the super chip and then craft our first tier 2 tool, the insect axe. With my axe equipped, I headed to the haze to collect the crow feathers. I headed back home and made a shovel, allowing me to collect clay. I then headed to the anthill to collect some red ant parts. As you can see, my bow accuracy was getting much better.
Stop the cap! Stop the cap right now! Stop the cap!
With all of these resources combined, I was able to make my first spinning wheel, which I then used to spin some silk rope. Once that was done, I was able to make the crow crossbow. I cannot overstate how big of a difference this made. This is like going from a mosquito needle to a toenail scimitar. Not only that, but I could now parry attacks much more easily, as the crossbow allows you to block at any time, unlike the bow. Without a second thought, I upgraded the crow crossbow straight to level 3. I then decided to make some gas arrows as it was big brain time. I found some grubs and shot the ground where they were, so that the gas would kill them. Unfortunately, this doesn't work. I seem to remember it working in a myth busting a long time ago, but maybe it's just changed since then. Nonetheless, it was time to take on some bombardiers as I needed boiling glands. Just look at the damage difference and blocking difference versus earlier, where I was struggling for my life. This allowed me to make a drying rack to dry my berry chunks into leather. Now it was off to the haze with our new crossbow as I needed some fungal growth, so I decided to take on some infected mites. While here, I discovered the haze lab, unlocking the first tier of Natural Explorer. Thank God. I got an infected weevil to damage the door, and then took out the infected gnats, unlocking the first tier of Sharpshooter. But this mutation would only become useful when stage 3 was unlocked. Now I just needed to bring another infected weevil to the door. Easy, right? Wrong. I failed miserably. Although I did unlock the first stage of Cardiofan in the process. Okay, I got another one. Surely this time it can't go wrong. Oh no, he just got stuck in the ground.
The game is broken, EA Sports! The game is broken!
Well, when plan A fails, I always have a plan B. So I headed into the ant nest and stole a bunch of their eggs. They weren't happy, but I soon would be. While here, I grabbed the red anthill chip, as apparently I hadn't grabbed it yet for some reason. I analysed the eggs, unlocking the recipe for the Bratburst, and all I had to do now was craft them. Wait, why am I sleeping? That's right, I slept, causing the eggs to hatch.
You're a donut! You're so stupid! You're so stupid! You're stupid!
Luckily, I still had 3 eggs left, which I quickly crafted into Bratbursts before they hatched too. Next, I wanted a crow feather cap, but I needed crow feathers and berry leather, so we would have to wait for now. I gave Burgle the red anthill chip, which I then used to unlock fiber bandage efficiency and the canteen upgrade. Time for the secret lab. Now I know what you're thinking. You can't use the pinch whacker. I know, lil guy, calm down. I wasn't interested in that. I instead wanted the plating inside of here, as it would allow me to upgrade my armor to levels 6, 7 and 8 early on, which I needed for the marksman cap later. Time to collect some more berries. Unfortunately, my glider didn't agree, and I took my second death to fall damage. I shot a berry with my crossbow, and when it hit the ground, it pushed the arrow through to the other side. It's small details like these that make Grounded such a great game. Glazing aside, it was time to take on a stink bug so I could get some parts. The first only dropped 3, so I had to take on another. I then headed back to the haze to collect more crow feathers. After breaking 2, I got 4 pieces, meaning I was still 1 short of making the cap. Luckily, there was a new one that spawned at the fountain by the hedge, so I grabbed it. With these resources, I was able to craft the insect hammer, meaning we could now collect molars, as well as other tier 2 resources. I was also able to make the marksman cap, which when upgraded sleek, boosts bow damage, so would be really useful for this challenge. Speaking of which, I instantly upgraded it to level 5. I didn't make it sleek just yet, as I didn't know how many times I'd need to repair it before the assistant manager fight, and once it's level 6 or higher, it can no longer be repaired. I also made a pebblet dagger, meaning we could only be heading to one place. It's pond time. I first began by collecting some eelgrass, which allowed me to make the gill tube, which we could actually use for once. I then decided it was time to use some bombs to get grub hide for a shield. This didn't go as planned, and I blew myself up, causing death number 3. I took out another grub with a bomb, giving me enough hide to make the weevil shield, which I could use to parry easier, although I couldn't use it at the same time as the crossbow. As always with my first 3 molars, I added an extra mutation slot, allowing me to use coup de grace again. Time to enter the pond, and the discovery of the pond depths unlocked Mertine, which I instantly equipped. I used the scanner to get into the pond lab with plenty of time remaining, and then activated the switch, turning on the breakers. I headed to the Arcar room and swiftly took it out before activating each of the breakers, allowing me to enter the pond lab easily. I activated the computer and then got to the end, collecting the super chip and the duper disc before opening the pond dome. I gave the chip to Burgle and then bought a few new things using my science for building later. I put a plate into my acorn armor as it was low on durability, and upgrading fully repairs your armor. I also finally got my crossbow to level 5, which was the highest level I could get for a while. Mint box time, as I needed these shards for fresh defense and also elemental arrows later on. And trust me, I'd need a lot of elemental arrows. I was also looking for crow feathers for arrows using the surveyor scanner. The scanner told me there was one here, but I looked everywhere and it was nowhere to be found. My armor seemed to be lacking, so it was time to take on some ladybugs. The first gave me 5 parts, the second gave me 2 parts, and the third gave me 3 parts and a head. With all of my molars, I made a bunch more upgrades, as I knew I'd need everything I could get if I wanted to beat the game using only a bow. Time to bomb some grubs again, making sure not to blow myself up too this time. I made myself some fresh arrows and then inserted my duper discs, allowing me to dupe grub hide, which I then used to make the Canteen Plus to carry more water. Next, I made the Ladybug armor, giving us a much needed upgrade. I upgraded both pieces to level 5 and finally made the marksman cap sleek, giving us that bow damage increase. With all of the preparation, it was time. I used the infected weevil to open the door to the haze lab and headed inside. I grabbed the loot and activated the lever before heading to the final room, grabbing the granola bars and hitting the switch, starting the fight. I entered the fight worried that my crossbow would be too weak, but just look at the damage. After just 6 fresh arrows, the infected ladybug was obliterated, and I got truffle tussle and headed to the final room, grabbing the super chip, duper disc, bombs, and granola bars before leaving. Just like that, I was off to the sandbox for our next adventure. I was taking on a pit antlion when the wolf spider snuck up on me. This cost me a few granola bars, but somehow I was able to make out alive and force them to fight each other instead of me. I then headed into the salt mines to collect salt shards, making a bunch of salt arrows for our next challenge. This of course was the Black Ant Hill lab, which I began by breaking into and then scanned my hand, getting attacked by the sneaky Taze-T. I then gained clearance level A and B while looting all of the chests. I opened the door to the boss and bombed it. I decided to go with Cardio Fan, Coup de Grace, Parrymaster and Sharpshooter, despite the latter 2 of these mutations being useless in this fight. I headed in and equipped my salt arrows. Time to put the crossbow to a true test. I summoned the boss and began by shooting its minions. As you can see, I took out a Taze-T in 2 shots, and the boss was taking major damage from my crossbow, with around 2 bars per shot. This fight lasted around 60 seconds, and genuinely might have been one of the fastest times I have killed the assistant manager in. This hugely surprised me, and proved that the crossbow is indeed pretty strong when given elemental arrows. This is because not only is the assistant manager weak to salty damage, but also elemental arrows don't deal stabbing damage, they only deal elemental damage. This makes them insanely strong against all enemies, even those that are resistant to stabbing.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Defeating the boss gave me Shocking Dismissal as well as the keycard, although it was agreed I couldn't use Shocking Dismissal as it wasn't a ranged attack. I used the keycard to gain access to the Black Ant Super Chip, and then used it again to get the zipper from the Oak Lab, along with the loot in the chest. I talked to Burgle and gave him all of the chips we had collected, allowing me to unlock globs, flavoured globs, the glue masher, and the oven. I also made sure to unlock feather roofs, as I would need these for the final defense later on. I instantly made the glue masher, as I needed repair glue to repair my marksman cap and put it with my other stations. I also upgraded the Ladybug armor to sleek level 7, giving us the ability to heal more, and upgraded the cap to level 7 also. I was collecting a crow feather when, as in every challenge I do, I magically got the feather fletchling trinket. This is one of the worst trinkets in the game, yet it seems to follow me everywhere. We will not be using it despite it being a ranged trinket. I was leaving the Oak Lab when an orb weaver spotted me. No problem, I'll just take it out real quick. That didn't go to plan, and clearly the game glitched, killing me instantly. This doesn't count toward the death counter, because this is literally a bug. I also forgot to set my spawn, so I respawned at the Black Anthill Lab. Fun. When I finally made it home, I decided it was time to make more crow feather arrows, but I had no silk rope, so I used my spinning wheel to make some, but ran out of web fibre. The next day, I decided to head to the hedge, as I needed web fibre, and spiderlings would be a great way to farm it, and would also help me with stage 2 of Sharpshooter, which is exactly what I unlocked. Once home, I began spinning loads more silk rope and cleared my inventory. With the lower yard all but complete, it was time to head to the upper yard. While here, I saw my first scarab, and as you can see, I never miss shots, and hit it first try with my crossbow. When looting it though, I only got 2 twinkling shells. But not to fear, as I found another. But again, when looting it, I only got 2 twinkling shells. I discovered the field station by the termite nest, and this unlocked the second stage of Natural Explorer, making me even faster.
I don't think you have any idea how fast I really am. I'm fast as boy.
It was now time to take on some termite soldiers, and as you can see, the arrows were doing an amazing job due to their salt damage, and I was able to get the chompers I needed easily. But to make the axe, I also needed tough gunk, so it was time to slay some ladybirds too, as they dropped plenty. With the resources obtained, I was finally able to craft the termite axe, meaning we had our first tier 3 tool. Speaking of termites, I headed back to the nest to grab the twinkling shell bag, and then also headed to the king's lair as I wanted the woodpile chip. I then headed on top of the nest to collect all of the candy, as I would need as much as possible for more tier 3 arrows. While collecting it, I got the suspicious ice cap trinket, which would be nice except it doesn't work with bows or crossbows.
Yes! 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 No! No! No!
Regardless, now that we had a tier 3 axe, I could collect pupa from the ladybird area, as I would need this for my tier 3 hammer later. Speaking of the hammer, I would also need black ox parts and horns, so it was time to fight some. I had to watch out for the thrown rock attack, as I couldn't block it without a shield, but my salt arrows did plenty of damage, and I was able to take them out. The first gave me a horn and 2 parts, and the second gave me the exact same. I spent 5 more molars unlocking my final mutation slot, and then gave Burgle the woodpile chip, allowing me to unlock the wizard hat and the candy staves. I then used the super duper to dupe more black ox parts, as I wanted to craft the hammer and the crossbow. I was missing a few resources for the crossbow though, and first needed the hammer to collect them. While waiting for pupa to dry, I headed to the upper yard and used fresh defense to collect some everchar coal, as I needed to make myself an oven, as this would allow me to upgrade my crossbow. I now had a black ox hammer, so I headed onto the shed porch to take down some ants, as I wanted their parts for a shovel. While here, I went into the cup to grab the mints for later. I then went to the sour wormhole rocket to collect our first sour candy, as I would need sour arrows for the final defense and schmecta fight. I then used my hammer to grab some pinecone pieces and some rust, before crafting a black ant shovel and the black ox crossbow. This would become the best weapon I would use for the remainder of the playthrough. I instantly upgraded it to level 6 mighty. I made myself a black ant shield and equipped it, although I rarely got to use shields as all ranged weapons I use are two-handed. I talked to Burgle and he gave me the all-important fuse, which was needed to progress this story. I headed straight to the full-size Scabby to insert it and push the button. Before dropping down, I jumped into the ashtray to collect the toenails, as I would need these for the embiggening cocktail later. I scanned my hand and headed into the undershed, making sure to grab all of the goodies from the storage. My first task was to head into the pipe, as I wanted to collect some twinkling shells. I was able to get 9 from 4 scarabs, which was good enough as I now had enough to max out my crossbow. I could have skipped the widow, but I don't back down from a challenge, so I headed in with my feather arrows and went for it. I missed a parry very early on and took a big hit, but then I didn't get hit for the rest of the fight, destroyed the widow and collected my loot, including 2 super spider venom. I went into the lab and flicked the switch and grabbed a few more granola bars before heading to the next boss fight. This time I was using fresh arrows, of course, as this is what the Mantis is weak to. As you can see, they're really effective and also work against the summons, which appear during the fight. Whenever I was running low, I would just craft more ammo, and soon enough, the Mant was destroyed and I got the mutation which I couldn't use. 1000 raw science and a gold card. With the Mant defeated, I used the bioscanner to free Dr. Tully and talk to him, allowing me to get the grilled science and give it to him. Once home, I found some not so friendly orc bugs has shown up. I'm not exaggerating when I say I hate these guys, and I wish there was a setting to disable them. I then used my globs to upgrade my crossbow to level 7. To upgrade it further, I'd need the stump chip. I then used my resources to make 2 of the staves, being the spicy and mint staff. I'm not a fan of the staves, but I thought I might as well craft them for the sake of the challenge and to test them out. I also upgraded both of them to level 6. I also decided to make the fire ant shield, even though I was barely using my shield anyway. With our new spicy staff, it was off to the hedge, where I unlocked the first stage of Whittle Wizard by obliterating the spiderlings. Here's a comparison yet again between weapons. The staves suffer from the same thing the bows do, when after shooting there is a huge delay before you can block. The crossbow is different, as you can block right after shooting, making it still by far the best choice. For the Broodmother fight, I decided to run Whittle Wizard, Coup de Grace, Cardio Fan, Spicy Safety, and Mithridatism. Here we go. The Whittle Wizard was causing a burn effect, which was helping my damage against the Broodmother. The staff was also really effective for taking out the summons, but I was taking a lot of damage because of the slow blocks, and then the parry debuff, making it even harder to parry. This ended up being one of the hardest Broodmother fights I've experienced, but eventually I was able to finish her off, getting mom jeans as well as all of the loot which we'd use later. I continued on through the hedge, taking out spiderlings to unlock stage 2 of Whittle Wizard, and then went to war with about 10 different types of enemies at once under the bird bath. Eventually I was able to clear out all of the bugs in the hedge and unlocked the 3rd and final stage of Whittle Wizard, making it as powerful as possible. Back home now, and time to repair my armor. I repaired the helmet and upgraded my leggings to repair them, but needed more glue for my chest plate. I headed to the underwater lab to unlock the Stump Lab entrance and grabbed the left elf charm, which I would never ever use. Speaking of opening areas up, I turned on faction reactivity and cut down our first wasp nest, which caused the wasps to get a little bit angry.
You sent me a message first, yeah? I live in Smethwick, Birmingham, if you want the door.
Then I cut down a second wasp nest, which made them aware of me. And finally, I cut down a 3rd wasp nest, which disturbed the hive, and I instantly turned faction reactivity back off because wasp raids are a joke. Since the Stump Lab was unlocked, I headed inside to grab the Mantis kebab recipe and parkoured to the computer, unlocking the final door and allowing me to collect the Stump Lab chip. Once I had left, I built a lean-to and slept, which of course gave me the cutscene, unlocking the Brawny Boy bin. I headed inside and used the hammer skip to avoid running around before collecting the molar on the Tased T head, which I struggled to get every single time. I discovered the field station, which unlocked the 3rd and final stage of Natural Explorer, and then headed into the hive to grab the recipe for the BBQ medley, which we'd need to summon the Wasp Queen later on. Next, I headed to the milk molar jar, as I'd somehow forgotten to go there, and collected all 5 milk molars inside. Once home, I realised I had been scammed, and I would need to fight the Broodmother again to make the Mantis kebab, as I didn't have enough chunks. I also needed some more items to make the BBQ medley. Time for a molar spree, as I had 16 to spend. I started by increasing my health, and then maxed out my healing. Next, I headed to the picnic table to unlock the 2nd stage of Coup de Grace. I didn't bother with the chip because it didn't have anything I needed. While farming aphids for food, I got lucky and got the gold card. This was our first non-guaranteed gold card in the playthrough. I gave Burgle the stump chip and the mysterious chip, allowing me to unlock tier 3 upgrades as well as the dissection expert mutation. Back for round 2 with the broodmother as I needed more chunks. I used the spicy staff yet again, and this was again difficult as parrying with this weapon is really tough. I was just able to survive and got the chunks I needed for the Mantis kebab. Back home now where I cooked some mighty jewels and upgraded my cap to level 9 and my Ladybug chestplate and leggings to level 8. I was saving the armor plates for another set later on. I then used the jewels to get my crossbow to level 8, leaving one more to go. I headed to the Moldorc Castle moat and used the jump shot technique to take out spiny water fleas, as I needed pond moss. It took a while, but eventually I got a piece, and I took it back to the Super Duper to get 5 pieces in total. I used my oven to cook the Mantis kebab and BBQ medley, and then crafted the sour staff using the pond moss. I spent some raw science unlocking zip lines and then used my handy nat to build one connecting my base to the upper yard, saving me a bunch of time travelling up there. Speaking of which, I headed back to the upper yard to open the JavaMatic and place the embiggening cell inside. I then headed to the top to input the ingredients before using my handy nat to repair the mixer modules. Next, I talked to Tully and he opened up the storage room for me, allowing me to steal all the goodies that are inside. Off to the Moldorc Castle now, and while taking on some tiger mosquitoes, I unlocked the third and final stage of Sharpshooter, which made my candy arrows even more powerful than ever. And it was time to take on a new enemy while up here, the moth. This was the whole reason behind making the sour staff, as it makes it a cakewalk to take on the moths. It actually makes it so that the moth can never attack, as every time you hit the moth it cancels its attacks. Thus I was able to defeat the moth without getting hit and got 4 fuzz but no scales. While over here I talked to Tully and he opened up the mysterious lab for me. I was greeted by a fire ant but quickly took it out and headed inside. Usually this boss fight is easy, so I wasn't too worried. My crossbow with sour arrows was doing immense damage to Schmecter, and it was also able to 3-shot the Orc Weaver Juniors. But as the fight went on, he kept summoning more helpers, and I simply couldn't kill them quick enough due to the debuff when shooting a crossbow. By the end, there were 3 juniors chasing me, and I had no choice but to keep shooting Schmecter, and hope I could kill him before they got me first. By the end, I was able to survive, barely, with very few heals remaining, and luckily killing Schmecter also took out the Orc Weavers, otherwise I would have been finished. I looted his body for the data disc, as well as the gold card, and also unlocked corporate kickback. When one boss fight finishes, another must begin. It was time for the Mantis. Now bows are ironically one of the best strategies for this fight, so this should be really easy. All I had to do was keep running around the stump in circles, and eventually I killed the Mantis, getting Apex Predator and all of its loot too. With 2 bosses conquered, I decided to plug the haze, as we would soon be facing the boss, which was unlocked by doing this. I used our supreme plating to max out my Ladybug armor at level 9, and then took down some wolf spiders, unlocking both stage 2 and stage 3 of Mithridatism, which we would need as poison resistance was going to be important for the final 2 bosses. I spent 10 mighty jewels upgrading the crossbow to its max level of level 9, meaning my weapon was at full power. Sharpshooter, coup de grace, cardio fan, spicy safety, and Mithridatism. Can you guess which boss we're taking on next? That's right, it's time for the Wasp Queen. As you can see, I replaced my granola bars with slop smoothies, and it was time to go. The Wasp summon seems to die in 3 shots, which wasn't ideal, but it was possible. This fight took a while because this boss loves to spawn drones, which spawn in mid-fight, and I was just very limited by the damage I could deal due to the debuff when shooting a crossbow. Just when I thought I had it, the Queen summoned, but I decided to fully commit and ignore the drone, and was able to take down the Queen with 18 beefy slop remaining, unlocking Bardic Inspiration and looting all of the parts from the boss before spending the next 5 minutes picking up arrows. With this boss defeated, we only had 2 more things left to do. First, it was off to the JavaMatic to build my defenses. I've made a video on how to do this and will always follow my own video for this. I then realised I couldn't build stem half walls, because even though stem walls are unlocked when scanning weed stems, stem half walls are unlocked from the science shop, which makes no sense at all, but I purchased it as I needed the half walls for my defense. I headed home and built a bunch of statues as I wanted coziness level 4. It took a lot of building, but eventually I worked my way through the levels and got to level 4. I needed this as it unlocks pinecone roofs, which are also needed for the defense. With everything prepared, I started the final JavaMatic defense. Here's a look at what I ended up building. This should have been easy, but the debuff you get when shooting a crossbow really limited my damage output and made it hard. But luckily, my weapons were doing immense damage with every shot, and I was able to take out even ladybirds and black ox beetles in 10 or so shots. This was of course due to the sour arrows, which do pure sour damage, thus making them really strong, as all orc enemies are weak to sour. And just like that, the defense was done. I made sure to break all of the roofs after, as I needed the crow feathers to make as many arrows as possible for the final boss, and I then headed inside and grabbed the embiggening cell. While in this part of the map, I headed into the fridge in the undershed to steal a bunch more meals, and then also grabbed the fresh storage recipe which I had somehow missed earlier. This is how my molars were looking. It was too much effort to go and collect a bunch more for a small health or stamina boost, so this was as good as it was going to get. I made the moth chestplate and then upgraded it to level 8 bulky. I then took on some more spiny water fleas in the Moldorc Castle moat, as I realised I needed more pond moss to make the moth leggings. Once collected, I now had all the resources I needed. I also upgraded these leggings to level 7 bulky, meaning I needed to grab some more supreme marble rocks, which allowed me to upgrade both the leggings and the chestplate to level 9 bulky, maxing them both out. I shot some arrows at the ground as I was curious, how close are we to stage 3 of Cardio Fan? Usually by this point in the playthrough we would have it unlocked. Oh, there we go. Right on cue. This ant was being annoying, so I tried shooting it. I missed and hit my zipline, breaking the entire thing.
Stop it. Get some help.
I guess my crossbow was pretty powerful. I rebuilt the zipline and went looking for the silk. Apparently it just drops on the ground near the anchor, so I went and picked it back up. To prepare for the final boss, I made human food, liquid rage, green machine and sticky slop for as many buffs as possible. I also made 150 fresh arrows and brought along extra mints just in case. I had Thor's pendant and a bunch of bandages and smoothies for healing. This was going to be tough though. So tough, you might have noticed I'm playing on a mouse and keyboard now. I switched to using it for the final boss fight as I knew how hard it was going to be. I grabbed a spider slider from my fridge as high damage was going to be essential. My mutations were Sharpshooter to slow my enemy with the mint arrows, Coup de Grace for more crits, Cardio Fan for stamina, Spicy Safety for defense, and Corporate Kickback to heal during the fight. Attempt number 1. Phase 1 was looking good, and as always, my crossbow was doing immense damage, and I was parrying every attack. I was easily able to take it down, and then drink my smoothies in preparation for Phase 2. The second phase was also pretty easy, and I was on to the third and final stage. The scream attack quickly became a huge issue. When using a shield, you can hold block, and it won't damage you. But when using a crossbow, you will take damage, and you also get an attack damage debuff, so you have to parry it, which is really hard. This reduced attack damage made it hard for me to deal damage, and combined with my low defense, I was quickly obliterated. Attempt 2. Yet again, phase 1 was a cakewalk, but in stage 2, the scream was yet again troublesome, and I ended up walking backwards into a bomb and dying instantly. Attempt number 3. Phase 1 was a joke, and I quickly proceeded to phase 2. This time I switched to my shield before the scream so I could hold block and avoid the attack damage debuff entirely. This completely changed the fight. Although holding block on the scream somehow healed the boss for over 600 health. But regardless, I proceeded and finished phase 2. Time to try phase 3 again. I took all my smoothies and prepared for war. It was a horrible start, taking a few big hits in a row and missing a lot of parries, but it wasn't over yet. A bit later into the fight, I got cornered and lost health again, but I was fighting back, parrying the screams with the shield. After a long and tough fight, on our third attempt, with 35 stacks of healing debuff, I was finally able to take down the infected Broodmother, obtaining Spore Lord and all of its useless drops.
You're joking. Not another one? Oh, for God's sake, I can't stand this.
I headed to the mysterious machine and input the embiggening cell, allowing me to activate the spacer and growing big once again. As you can see, the scorecard says 4 deaths, but 1 was a bug from an orb weaver, and I reloaded twice from the infected broodmother, so it was actually 5. We finished with just under 1,000 parries and an 87% score. I hope you enjoyed this challenge video. If you did, leave a like on it. I have to admit, the elemental arrows are much better than I gave them credit for in my tier list video, as they carried me through this challenge. Crossbows are also clear of staves and bows. They are definitely much better. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.